welcome again to the Endless Report. This is episode 3. My name's Anthony, and joining me today is Cory. Hi, Cory.
Hello, how's it going?
It's going great. I'm really happy to have you here today, and excited to talk
Cool.
about all these stories we got on the docket. So I guess let's just get into it because we got a lot to talk about today. You
Sure,
want to
yeah.
start off talking about these new AMD next-gen CPUs and GPUs?
Yeah, absolutely. So AMD has a bunch of new stuff coming next year. There's going to be new CPUs and GPUs, which are next generation, more powerful kind of stuff. And that's just been confirmed. So these are going to be launching in 22, it looks like.
Hmm.
And uh, the graphics chip, I think, is going to be the first of its kind to feature a multi-chip module architecture, which I'm not totally sure what that means, but sounds powerful.
I'm also a bit of a novice when it comes to computer hardware, though it's a bit of a hobby of mine. So it's one of those things where I just find it interesting is I'm not very tech savvy when it comes to how those cores are made and the exact engineering of it. But it's one of those things where I'm like, wow, that's just exciting to see, what kind of new games can we make with this new architecture, especially considering the new graphics cards from NVIDIA that came out this past year and have obviously been crazy hard to get, just like the next
Yeah.
gen consoles and everything because of the chip shortage and everything going on right now. So it'll be
Hmm.
interesting to see when AMD, hops into the game how that's going to play and how their chips and how their CPUs, more especially, I'm actually really curious in that, how those are going to make a difference. Because I know Intel has a lot of big plans for the next few years as well when it comes to the CPU market. So if hopefully this chip shortage can shut down, I know I just read a story about PlayStation just secured a bunch of new chips for PlayStation's well into like mid 2022. So I think like obviously we're not out of the tunnel yet. There's a lot of crazy demand right now for this kind of
Yeah.
stuff. But like I think we're starting to see that the industry's moving really fast regardless. And I think a lot of cool stuff's coming down the pipeline. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, agreed. It'll be interesting to see what we can accomplish with these more powerful cards
Mm-hmm.
as they just get better and better. So yeah,
Agreed.
absolutely.
Speaking of
And
that, I know I kind of brought up PlayStation there. We had another article about the new PlayStation 5 software beta that unlocks the SSD expansion slot in the console. So,
yes, absolutely. So we have that article pulled up here.
so I don't know if you've been following this like kind of. There's been a little drama over it, but do you have any thoughts on this versus the Xbox Series X's storage? Have you heard about that? How they have a
I
proprietary slot?
I'm not super up to speed on it. I'm a PlayStation guy myself,
Mm.
but I'm not really sure what's up with the SSD stuff.
So when the PS5 first came out, there was this a lot of talk about the SSD inside it, that it was a revolutionary new fast design. Again, a little above my pay grade there, but I did watch the tech demo that they gave on it, and the PS5's SSD speed is just unprecedented, even versus the new Xbox's speeds and other classic PCIe SSDs. It's just something that hasn't been seen before in consoles. So to have an expandable storage, they didn't have one on their own, Sony. So to get that in the market, they had to rely on third-party retailers to start building new, faster SSDs that just really didn't exist yet at the time they were
Oh,
making the
interesting.
PS5. So the Xbox Series X was able to launch, and S, I believe, was able to launch with these proprietary little just slot cards. You put them right in, and boom, you have another terabyte of storage. Really, no problems there. And that was pretty much day one, I believe. Maybe a couple weeks later that came out. So pretty quick, pretty easy. But again, it's proprietary, so Microsoft controls the prices there, and there's really not many other options you can have. Versus PS5, it's been a little delayed, but now we're starting to have that option where you have all these different, hard drive companies, WD and like you see there right in the picture, like starting to make their own drives. And while they're expensive and there's a little bit of an extra step to open up your PS5 and put that in, it's not rocket science. And the good thing about this is, in like a few years, as more of these drives come out, obviously with all hardware, it just eventually gets cheaper because things
Hmm.
just keep getting better and better. So you'll see down the line, I think that like even though it's kind of ridiculous right now, the pricing, you're looking at like $300 to $400 for like a terabyte. You really like, it's like a price of another PS5 if you can get one at stock price. But they are really impressive drives. It's kind of a really new revolutionary technology, so it's exciting to see like in the future where that'll take the console.
Yeah, agreed. And I think SSDs are just becoming more popular in general for lots of things.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting that they're sourcing to third parties,
Yeah,
and that it looks like so you choose which one you buy, and
yeah,
do they have
and
different like specs?
yeah, and that's the problem because it's a great like a solution to the idea of like, great, you have options, but at the same time you have to be conscientious because What if, what if your drive doesn't fit? Every SSD is
Hmm.
different. Some have these giant heat sinks to cool them. And if the PS5 can't cool it on its own and you need its own cooling system, it may not fit in that little slot, you have on the side of the PS5. So it's an interesting take. But I think in the long run, I think people are kind of freaking out about that. Like, oh my goodness, what if people don't know? And I agree. It is nice to have an official product. But I do kind of believe that as time goes on and more of these third parties hop in, you will see like official, like this works with PS5 branding,
Yeah.
on a
Yeah, I'm
box. Like I
sure.
don't think that's out of the realm of possibilities. So
Yeah.
again, it is definitely more confusing than just being like, here's the official Xbox Seagate drive, here you go.
Yeah.
But I do think having more options is probably a good thing in the long run, especially for the kind of person that's spending a lot of money on a hard drive. They a Google search will probably, it'll lead you in the right direction with that. But again, it is a little more complicated. I can't deny that.
Yeah, it's interesting because it kind of brings it more like PC gaming where you're looking at
Mm-hmm.
different specs for the different components that you're building onto
Yeah.
your rig, which for me as a console person, I play on both console and PC.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the big appeals for console for me is that I don't have to worry about that because I know
Mm-hmm.
all the games that are made for that console will run on that console, and I don't have to worry about what graphics card or processor or whatever I'm sticking in there. But it's interesting with this, you kind of have that freedom to customize more. So I'm sure that'll appeal to some people.
Yeah, I agree. And I as someone who also kind of dabbles in PC but plays a lot of console just because I'm more comfortable on it,
Hmm.
I do get that idea of like there are a lot of people who don't want to deal, like not a lot of, PC is great. You can have, there's so much customization. I love it. There's so much more options and more power, just the games like that you can run. Like no doubt about it. But at the same time, a lot of people don't want to boot up a computer, download files, figure out their drivers. There's a lot that goes into PC that's just like I feel like I'm like working to get this game running sometimes. And a lot of times it's worth it, modding games, doing things like that. A lot of times it's like you'll spend more time actually working on the games on your computer than actually playing them.
Hmm.
And there's kind of a fun to that for me when it comes to
Yeah.
hardware and software. So I am kind of one of those people, but at the same time, I want to sit down on my couch sometimes and just play a video game and not to go through all these steps and just play a game with a friend and not worry about stuff like that. So obviously I do tend to be like, well, on a console, I would, figure the average person wants that experience to be easier overall. But again, I don't think it's the end of the world. And if you're someone who's playing a ton of games and needs terabytes more storage and stuff, I think that, you could probably be able to figure it out. It's just opening up this slot on the side of the console. There's no screws involved. It's just you pop it off and then there's like one screw in the SSD, and that's pretty much it. So I
Yeah.
think yeah, it'll definitely get better with time.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's looking interesting for the inclusion of SSDs in consoles in general.
For
Uh,
sure.
Moving away from the hardware side of things,
Mm.
and away from actual games in general, there was an interesting news story that I saw today about a FPS documentary that is in development right now.
Mm.
So let me pull up the article for that.
Awesome.
And so this is a documentary that a teaser trailer came out recently, which I can pull up here, and I'll just have this going. Uh, and basically, this is going to be the first documentary of its kind to really go in depth on first person shooters as a genre and the history of this genre, the development of techniques, and it's going to feature a bunch of big names in the industry, like Randy Pitchford of Gearbox, and Halo developers, Doom developers, and I personally am pretty excited for this. I really love video game documentaries. I think it's a super interesting kind of media that we don't get a lot of like literary exploration of. We're getting more and more as this becomes a more established industry, but there's not as much exploration of the history of it like there is for, say, film or
Yeah.
visual arts. So I'm excited to get into that with a documentary on the first person shooter genre.
Yeah, this was something that I didn't even really know about until this morning when we discussed this on the articles for today, and I was honestly really excited because I come from a film background as well. It's what I went to school for, and I love documentary filmmaking and everything that goes along with that. And I think that game preservation and game history is something I'm pretty passionate about because I think there was a thing with film in the infancy of film where films got thrown away, burned just because they didn't really have
Hmm.
any perceived value, and then at some point people were like, wait, like this is history. We need to preserve this. We need to have a system to not let that happen and things get lost on the wayside. And unfortunately, we forget that like as far as games have come in such a short time, like in the grand scheme of things, we're relatively in the infancy of video games. And it's tough to see that so many things have already been like pushed to the wayside or unable to purchase again. So to have documentaries and to have things that are preserving the history and talking about how these things were made and how like maybe your favorite games today got some inspiration or were able to exist because of something else you may not even heard about, like that's right up my alley. That's something I'm definitely going to want to check out. So like I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a couple of documentaries about the video games industry or game development that I've really enjoyed. Like Indie Game is one that's excellent that talks about it follows the development of a few hit indie games like Fez and Super Meat Boy, Binding of Isaac. And that's a fascinating look into that world. There's also, I can't remember what it's called, but there's one about the ET games that were buried
buried in the desert.
Underground. Yep. and that gets more into games preservation in general, which you mentioned, and that's something that's like really important to me as well, because we get these consoles that have games built specifically for them, and then when those consoles become obsolete, there's it's not as big of a cultural thing to want to preserve those as part of our cultural history yet, as there is, say, for film and stuff. And you talked about the process of getting there with film. We're still in that process with games. So yeah. I really hope that games preservation will become a bigger thing. I would love to see like museums about the history of games someday. That would be awesome. So yeah, I'm just very excited about this in general.
Yeah, agreed. And I think it was, you made me think of something kind of funny I saw the other day. It was an article from like it was like something like 1980 something, 87 I believe, or something, and it was just like a news column. Someone was like, do you think video games will survive? And they're like, I don't know, I don't think it provides any educational value to kids. I think it'll be gone in like a year or two. And that was at a time where video games were kind of in a drought, so it made sense. And like, but like when you frame things that this medium is only for kids, or this is only for this certain purpose, it's very limiting. Because when you think about film, if you just saw a Pixar movie and you would say, yeah, that was cute, that was really fun, and maybe I got emotional, but that's for families. That's not really like a that's not for real gory or mature rating kind of content. Like maybe you could say the opposite, or art, indie films, like maybe you wouldn't even think of other genres because you're just so focused on one aspect of something. So when you think of video games more than just a game or just one type of medium or console, when you think of it as just like wide branching interactive form of storytelling that could really be in any form, it's exciting to see like how society's starting to embrace that and starting to understand like the value of storytelling and just experiences that games can provide to people, educational or just entertaining or not. It's just like really cool to see like that kind of become more prominent, especially in other mediums like film and TV.
Yeah, and I've absolutely always believed that games are just a really unique and awesome medium. I mean, I'm it's the industry that I'm going into.
That's of course why we're both here on the show talking about them.
But I'm just glad to see it gain more cultural recognition. And
yeah, for sure.
It's interesting to get into first-person shooters specifically in a documentary because that's a genre that is relatively young, even among, games as a whole are relatively young, but we've only had the technology to do a first-person shooter for so many years.
Yeah, 30, 40 years. I mean, I don't want to like undershoot it, so I want to say 30, 40 years, probably a little smaller than that, maybe it's 20 something, but it was in the 90s, 80s when that really late 80s that really became prominent. Yeah. And my limited knowledge, again, being someone who was born in the 21st century, like, but having learned about, games like Doom and Quake and games even before that you probably don't get enough recognition as they should, that kind of paved the way for, on PC, those FPS experiences. Like, it's really cool to like that we're going to see a documentary where we kind of learn more about that history and how that evolved into other games, Call of Duty, CSGO, like games that kind of define the genre over the past, 10, 20 years and the origins of that. So definitely exciting stuff.
Yeah. I'll note here, the article says once finished, it's supposed to be at least 3 hours long, which that's a lot of movie.
Okay. But there was a Michael Jordan documentary that was like 10 hours long episodic. So video games could get a few hours. With sports and other topics I think like the merit of video games are certainly there. There's certainly years and years of history that you could have probably like a very long PBS document, 20-part documentary on the history of some of these genres. So I'm excited for all that content for sure.
Absolutely interested
But
to see where that goes.
speaking of TV productions, I think we were talking about another interesting development in the new Last of Us television show. I'm not sure if we've mentioned this on the streams before and on Endless Report before, but HBO has been developing a major production based on the Last of Us video game series, and they hired some actors you would know, including Pedro Pascal, who's the Mandalorian. He also played the Viper on Game of Thrones, which is the biggest HBO show of all time. So kind of staying in the line of that there. And also Ellie from The Last of Us being played by Bella Ramsey, also from Game of Thrones. So very interesting new production. We haven't heard a ton about it, but over the past year, we've been hearing about new castings and a little more details about the funding. But the last big story we did hear was the budget and the fact that they started shooting, they started building sets in Canada, and it's actually kind of out of this world, the budget and the amount of work they're putting into the show. So it's kind of still up in the air what the actual budget is, but there have been figures that have said it's easily over the 8-figure mark or every episode, which makes that pretty much at least $10 to $15 million per episode, which is more expensive than even the last season of Game of Thrones, which before this I think was the most expensive season of television of all time, HBO or not. So it's kind of bonkers, talking about respecting the storytelling of video games, to take a video game like as influential as The Last of Us and make it become pretty much the biggest television show of all time when it comes to the numbers and just the production value. So pretty remarkable. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean that's mind-blowing to me, just how much is invested in this and how unique it is really for a video game live-action TV show. It's not something that we've seen a ton of times before. I mean, I'm personally familiar with like the animated Castlevania Netflix series, and
there were a few Halo series that kind of didn't get off the ground, but they were pretty good. But there's been a lot of other shows that haven't really got off the ground, I'm sure, for a lot of other series. But it's still like exciting to see something like this where it's like they're putting so much respect and money into it, which is obvious, which is an obvious indication that they care a lot about the show being successful. So I mean, I think it's, people get wary when you start talking about video game movies or TV, especially when there's big budget, because you think of some examples of not necessarily bad interpretations, but I know like when you talk about like Monster Hunter or Assassin's Creed, where those are movies that people love, but maybe if you're fans of the game series, you may not sort of love the way that they're not accurate to the games as much. But this seems like they're putting a lot of sticking to the story 100% or not, whether it's unexpected or not. It seems like they're obviously putting a lot of respect and care into telling this narrative in a television format. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, me personally, I'm one of those people who is always wary when somebody talks about making an adaptation of a video game to a movie or TV show. I mean, in recent years, I've been finding there's been more that I've actually enjoyed, and they seem to be getting better at it, adapting it from one medium to another. Like the Castlevania TV show I enjoyed. I've liked the Detective Pikachu movie. I thought was actually pretty fun.
I actually haven't seen it yet, but I'm like, I need to watch that just for the.
I liked it. I thought it was cute.
Yeah, I bet it is. But oh yeah, sorry. We continue.
Oh, I was just gonna say, and I'm interested by the kind of high profile casting of this Last of Us TV series with Pedro Pascal. I think it's an interesting choice, and I'm down for it. I loved The Mandalorian. I liked him in that, so that'll be interesting. I didn't like him in the newer Wonder Woman movie, which I think that was more a result of the movie and not of his acting.
That was one of those movies where I'm not even sure I saw the whole movie. I was like half watching it in the living room, like, all right, like, and his performance was very outlandish in that movie. But I guess I enjoyed it for what it was in that movie, I'll say. But agreed, I'm definitely a fan of Pedro Pascal, and it's interesting. He's been all over recently, like in like some very high profile roles. Obviously, he was in a lot of roles beforehand. But he was in Game of Thrones, of course, but that's what I know him from before The Mandalorian. So it'll be interesting to see how he takes on this role of Joel. I think it's gonna be a really cool role for him. So I love the first Last of Us game. I love the second game. I know there's a lot of controversy over the story of the second game, but obviously no spoilers during the stream. But I really, it's a game universe that I'm really excited to see come to life in TV. So very excited about that again.
I think it's certainly one of the most notable and influential game narratives
Hmm.
that I'm aware of, and I also really loved the first game especially. I enjoyed the second game as well. I thought that the gameplay in the second game was a really good and tight elaboration of the mechanics from the first game,
Agreed.
and the story was really good as well.
Hmm.
So I'm cautiously optimistic. I'll say that about the TV
I
series.
agree,
I'm gonna
and
watch it.
I so am I. I'm definitely gonna watch it. Maybe might be a little scary. There's a lot of budget in those clickers and the zombies.
Yeah,
Maybe
for sure.
quite a thriller kind of show. So it'll be interesting to see that in live action. Also, the special effects and the makeup and all that's gonna go into that, and also just the idea of it being, again, like you said, it's one of those stories that was a kind of like a game changer for lack of
Mhm.
a better for no pun intended, for lack of a better word, for video games. And that, not to say that there weren't video game stories before this that were incredibly awesome and influential, but I think it was one of those that got notice from the larger industry of entertainment that was like, whoa, like this is something that like everybody's talking about, this incredible, like show stopping, like they performed it live. Like it was one of those games that really got a lot of attention in terms of like, this is what video game storytelling could be like, could be like, and like this is why it demands respect. So just from that aspect, even if they do change aspects of it, I think just this, like I've been saying, the symbolicism of this actually happening and the fact that it's going to be literally bigger than Game of Thrones, which I know there's been controversy over that show as well and its ending and all that, but was literally, if you, I don't know, even if you watched it or not, it was, I think everybody can remember it being like the biggest thing everybody was talking about like all the time. Like it was like every sketch show was joking about it. Every, like everyone on television was talking about Game of Thrones, like always. So like
Yeah.
it's, to think of a show that is a video game show that maybe not a lot of people know, to coming out of the gate with like that much money put into marketing and producing that show for the masses. It's like, whoa, like this is going to come out like fast and furious. And like
Yeah.
as someone, like I've watched Game of Thrones, my family, I watched The Walking Dead with them, and a lot of shows like kind of similar to like that. And I'm like, you have no idea, like, it's gonna be like your new favorite thing maybe, like like I feel like I won't shut up about it because it's like, whoa, like the amount of just like investment they put in it is just like mind blowing to me.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think as far as games go, The Last of Us is actually a really strong candidate for adaptation to TV.
Hmm.
Just because like TV shows with that kind of tone, and zombie TV shows are huge. People
Yeah.
love those. It'll be interesting to see with how much they're marketing and budgeting for this, with a budget of maybe over 10 million per episode or whatever, which
Yeah.
is crazy.
Crazy.
Uh, it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see if people who aren't even gamers themselves or don't know anything about The Last of Us will watch this. I'm
Hmm.
sure they will. I mean, people who weren't into The Witcher got into
Yeah.
the Netflix Witcher
That's
series.
a great
So
adaptation, like to mention for sure. And there's also, I'm not sure if you've heard, there's a Fallout series in development as well.
is there?
I think it's at Amazon, I believe. Because they're also doing a Lord of the Rings series, which again, not video games
Interesting.
per se, but a Fallout series is like, oh, okay. And I think after Fallout 4, especially, that was a game that got that series a lot of attention, even
Hmm.
from the not so hardcore RPG crowd. Like I think like, or the Bethesda, Skyrim, Elder Scrolls crowd either. I think like a lot of people that weren't into Fallout 3 or New Vegas or the earlier titles that weren't from Bethesda, like even, I think, kind of noticed Fallout 4, and obviously 76 was a whole different story. To knock it off on all that's the segue of that whole saga of that franchise, but that show could be interesting as well, where I think it has a lot of more public attention, just that branding of Nuka Cola and the Pip-Boy. I think it's something a lot of people have
Yeah.
seen or know about, especially from the marketing campaign for that game, which was all
Yeah.
over TV as well at the time. Like you just saw it everywhere. So
That's interesting. I didn't
that's
know
another
about that.
interesting. Yeah, I was something I saw recently, and I was like, I forgot about that. That's gonna be very interesting. But it's just cool to see all these little projects popping up, and it's like, oh, I forgot about that. I forgot about this, and it's clear that at least in this case of The Last of Us, that Sony is heavily invested in The Last of Us. I mean, they're remaking. I don't know if you've heard this rumor, but they're remaking the first Last of Us game just fully from another studio to just put
I
on
think I did
PS5,
hear that.
which I think is interesting. Maybe given the the controversy over the release and the leaks of Last of Us 2 and everything that came with that, but also wanting to embrace the new television show. So they're like, let's get out another, we already had The Last of Us Remastered, which you can play on PS4 still, and has a, still has a multiplayer community and that multiplayer. But Naughty Dog's been kind of silent. They said they were working on a factions multiplayer for The Last of Us 2 as like maybe its own standalone add-on kind of game, which
That's
we haven't heard
fascinating.
about in a long time. So maybe it was delayed. COVID obviously probably played a part in that development, but that's coming around. And then we also have the remake of the first game, like I just said. So lot of investment in the Last of Us franchise for sure.
Yeah.
I guess they're believing in the show, giving it a broader audience and maybe forcing people who are, the tens of millions of people who are probably wanting to buy a PS5 in the next few years are going to want to maybe hop on that video game, the new remaster after they watch the television show. So it all
Yeah,
makes sense.
for sure. I don't know how I feel personally about the remake of the first game, because it's
Mm.
already got like the remaster, like you said,
Yeah,
and I
again, it's
think
like
it's
I
such a
want to play
gem of a
that,
game.
but I don't know if we need this per se. But
Yeah. Yeah,
I'll,
it's such
I'll
a
play.
gem
I
of a
probably
game
will play
already.
it. Agreed.
But yeah, it's interesting because I'm reading on this article, and it says that the Last of Us TV show is apparently going to follow the story of the original game, but not be a beat for beat retelling of the game,
Mm.
which could be a wise choice. I mean, I think video game movies and shows that try to be exactly what the game was don't succeed,
Hmm.
because it's just not meant for that medium. But also, you have to be careful not to uh, invoke the ire of the fans,
Yeah,
because it's such a beloved game.
agreed.
So it'll
Yeah,
be
and I think there's a
interesting.
difference between like when you're writing just to switch things up, maybe just for shock value to be like, oh, you didn't expect that fan, like this person,
Hmm.
maybe this character that dies in the game stays alive, or vice versa. They kill off somebody, or they introduce a new character to do something, that another character would do in the game. And you're like, oh, I didn't see it going exactly that way. Like I enjoy that in shows. Like I brought The Walking Dead before, and that was a show that notoriously like kind of like faltered from the source material a lot. And there were times where I was like, oh, that's an interesting twist, and like they kind of give this moment to another character. And there were other times where I'm like, I don't know if you can do that because then 3 seasons from now and this thing happens and you kind of needed it to be that character who had all these past experiences. It's like, well, if you just cut this person's limb off, it doesn't really have the same emotional weight of the person in the comics who like wrote up all this pre-story to that kind of happening, where you just kind of switch characters on a limb. No
Yeah.
pun intended again, but not to get into that show because I kind of get like frustrated with that show sometimes. But that it's things when you're invested in them and they kind of like
Hmm.
subvert your expectations on purpose. You're like, whoa, what's going on here? So again,
Yeah.
like I'm gonna watch it. I'm hoping that it's again stays true to the themes of the story and the kind of story the kind of emotion that it wants to tell. But I have no problem with it telling its own story as a show, and
Yeah.
not everything has to be exactly the same. But I get again, it's like do it because you're gonna make a better story that suits this show. Don't just
Yeah.
do it just to get people mad or like to shock. But I trust that like the writers of this show and the team at HBO will probably
Yeah.
do a good job of that.
I'm hoping so with
Yeah,
the budget.
yeah,
With
agreed.
that much money.
They're definitely investing a lot of confidence into it, so I'll tend to trust that confidence for now until I until I see it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, to take this to a little bit of a more serious note
Mm-hmm.
and get back into industry stuff, I know you talked last week on the stream about the whole Blizzard lawsuit. So, there's been lots of developments there recently. A big one is that the president of Blizzard has actually stepped down, and the studio is now going to be co-led by Jen O'Neill and Mike Ibarra as co-heads. So this is the first time that Blizzard has ever been led by a woman, which is pretty cool, pretty substantial. And these two are relatively new to the company, as far as I'm aware. This article describes that Mike Ibarra was a longtime Xbox employee who joined Blizzard in 2019 as an executive vice president. So he's been a high-ranking, official at Blizzard since 2019. And Jen O'Neill, let me see what this article says about her. I believe she also joined the company fairly recently. Uh, but they've put out a statement and have kind of reaffirmed their commitment to improving the Blizzard workplace and making it a place that is welcoming to women and minorities, and to rooting out the kind of toxic behavior that they're being sued for. So I think this is a good development. It'll be interesting to see where it goes from here. Uh, and then also, another thing related to Blizzard is that they are actually facing a second lawsuit now, which is related to the first. And this is on behalf of investors who are alleging that Blizzard has misled them, basically by claiming that they didn't have any legal worries going on, and companies are actually legally bound to disclose any
Mm.
important lawsuits or things like that. So Blizzard, having said that they do not expect those lawsuits to have a material adverse effect on our business, financial condition, results of operations, or liquidity. The investors are saying they definitely knew about this lawsuit and the investigations that were ongoing into company workplace conditions. So they are suing for being misled there on that
Mm.
information. So
I
Blizzard is
see.
having a rough time in general right
Yeah,
now.
yeah. And I think I was on mute for a second because there's a lawnmower going by my house, so I didn't want to get that
Oh,
too loud
sure.
over the mic. But I was just gonna point out that it's just like obviously there a change needed to happen. Again, I'm not someone who's fully versed on all the details of the original lawsuit, but obviously we went over a lot of them on the stream last week, and it was just kind of disgusting, egregious behavior that like doesn't really need to be explained why it was incredibly egregious. So obviously there's a cultural thing that needs to change in that company, and there needs to be a new policy, a new clear strict guidelines of how this is how we're going to change this company for the better, and be open and honest with that with their employees and with the public about how you root that out. So I guess it's good to see that this change in leadership here, and to see hopefully you can get a new perspective, and have a positive change for good in this situation. As someone who again we talked about before about someone people were potentially like young and coming into this industry, like you'd hope that these companies would be rooting out that kind of those kind of issues, and because it's just terrible to hear stories like this.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And I'm hoping that in the coming days and weeks we will see more of the the responsible employees who were involved in some of the more egregious events be
Being held
removed.
accountable. Yeah.
Yeah, well, held accountable and or removed
Hmm.
from the studio. We're seeing more of those kind of things happen, like the president stepping down and
Yeah.
obviously the new co-leads. So I'm hoping that this will be a good leadership change for them and that things will change for the better at the company. Um, and it's been pointed out that Jen O'Neill as a woman hopefully will be better about making the company a welcoming place
Mhm.
and a better environment for female workers.
I
So I'm hoping that's true.
Again, I hope that's the case. And like when I say held accountable, I mean like each of them have done very specific things, again, which I'm not entirely sure of. Like again, I haven't read all the details, but I have read a lot of details, and what I have read was terrible. So I think that whatever the actions were, besides just getting fired or stepping down from the
Yeah,
company voluntarily, they need to be held accountable for their actions in all aspects, whether that's legal or regular, whatever
agreed.
that is,
Yeah,
depending on what they've done. People, can't just get away with these kinds of things, and we have to set a precedent in situations like this. That's just not okay in any terms. So again, whatever that is for the specific individuals, and again, I know there are a lot of individuals implicated in this. Again, I think that this should be taken to the full extent of the investigation, and people should understand what was going on here, and hopefully this company could further on prove and be a place that's including and not suffering from these kind of cultural issues within the studio and
yeah,
within the publisher.
yeah, agreed. And I'm hopeful that this whole business with Activision Blizzard will set a precedent and initiate more positive change in the
Mm-hmm.
industry because Blizzard is such a big company. I'm hoping that this will kind of help set off a chain of events of exposure of any other toxic workplace
Mm-hmm.
conditions and actions to remediate and improve the industry for everybody. Because like the more we let this kind of stuff fester, the worse it will get. So I want the industry. I'm optimistic as someone who's going into this career.
Mm-hmm.
I want it to be a place that is welcoming for everybody, that is fair in its treatment of all employees. So I'm hopeful that conditions will continue to improve and that this event will kind of set things off in that direction.
100%. And I think just having that awareness of that, like you said, industry wide is obviously a good thing, and obviously it makes individuals aware of like like reaching out and being a source of good in the workplace. Because I think like if you're aware that problems like that can exist, you have to like fight against it and be, you know, a positive aspect of change, you know. So I think that's a good you know, a message for everybody to like hopefully you know, regardless of these terrible things that came out, that we can hopefully set an example that we can't let this happen again, and
Yeah.
that we should, you know, try to be better, both, you know, like culturally and as studios and as businesses, you know, to just build a better, you know, culture around this.
Yep. It's been really touching, actually, to see the solidarity with Blizzard
Hmm.
employees. How many of them have been protesting and making
Yeah.
statements, and even the in-game communities in Blizzard games, like in World of Warcraft, there have been virtual protests, and
Yeah.
people have like organized to hold events or like put. There was someone who put like a "go away" sign on one of the NPCs who was named after one of the implicated
Mm.
employees, uh, and that's really nice to see. I actually didn't expect that from the World of Warcraft community as someone who used to be a big
Hmm.
WoW player, but it's really good to see, and it makes me hopeful for the future of our industry, and in general about that there are good people,
Yeah.
and people are willing to stand up and support uh, the victims of this kind of behavior.
Agreed. And it's sad to see, especially for all the people that worked on this game and want to be proud of the things they've done, to like have to suffer through this, like, because there are so many good developers out there who are
Hmm.
probably good people, and like it just sucks that they have to be, you know, suffer from this culture or just either be affected by it. It's just really sad. And I've seen people, you know, tweeting like, this has made me think about like leaving the industry. Maybe people either work there or work in the industry or getting into the industry. And it's like, it's sad to see that, because like you said, we need good people to change that.
Hmm.
So like, if you're someone who, you know, again, like I could not blame anybody from, you know, from my not being in that perspective of that position to be discouraged by that. Of course I understand, but I think that it's important to note that, like, you know, people who are good people and do strive to do this, you know, to make this industry better are inspirational. And I think that's important, that we have people who continue to inspire us to be better and to be creative and to be inclusive in our, you
Yeah.
know, in our creations. And I just think that's, you know, for those people, you know, it's discouraging to see that discouragement, but I really hope that like people realize how much they're appreciated and how inspirational they are, you know,
Yeah.
to institute change.
Agreed. 100%. Uh, so I guess that's all the articles that I have pulled up. We can transition from this more serious topic to
Hmm.
talking a little bit about the future of the games industry and some
Yeah.
more game titles that we're actually excited about.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that, you know, segueing from talking about workplace culture and all that, this obviously it's something that's been really affected by just the state of the world right now, work at home conditions, COVID conditions, and just everything going on. And in terms of, you know, us leaving the space open, we wanted to talk about just the whole situation around delays and the games we're excited for, because it's a shame that a lot of, you know, these barriers are put up in game development, especially in the current situation. So it's nice to look forward to the future of, you know, positive things that are happening, games that are coming out, things we're excited for. So I think it'd be great to discuss, you know, some upcoming games, maybe some delays, potential delays that we've talked about in the past, and that kind of thing. But
Sure.
I would love to know, are there any, you know, particular games this maybe coming out this fall or maybe delayed this fall that you're really excited about that you'd like to discuss?
Sure. Yeah. I will say Horizon,
Mm.
Forbidden West, the next title in the Horizon series. I'm definitely excited about. I really enjoyed the gameplay video, the kind of demo teaser that they put out a while back.
Yeah.
I thought it looked great, and I absolutely loved the first game. It's one of my favorite games of all time. Uh, it has been recently delayed. It looks like there's rumors out about it being delayed until 22, which
Yeah.
doesn't surprise me, frankly,
Hmm.
uh, because I thought it was ambitious for them to want to release that like holiday season of this year. So I'm totally okay with that. Like that doesn't.
Yeah.
I want them to take as much time as they need to make that game as good as it can be. So
100%. And I think we've talked in the past about like I just started playing the first game and I've been really enjoying it. I'm still early on and I've been kind of sidetracked with other things. But I think it was interesting to see, like, you know, especially giving that state of play demo they did this summer where they showed us that game extended gameplay, and it looked fantastic. And it was interesting to see the confidence they had, at least presented, and being like, this is 2021, you know, no worries. And there were even quotes saying like, yeah, we're gonna get it out 2021. And then you see God of War get delayed, which was a very, you know, a very big release anticipated this year. And even last year, we were thinking that might not happen next year, even when they announced it. There's just a
mhm.
logo. And again, but then you see Horizon and you see them showing gameplay, and you're like, oh, maybe with the way they've kind of been close to their chest recently, Sony, with not showing a ton and not revealing a lot. I think we've talked about earlier on the earlier endless reports about how I kind of said like they haven't been talking about Horizon. I feel like it's gonna get delayed, and then you see all these rumors, and you're like, we're basically just confirming that. It basically is, even though Sony hasn't. I'm not sure they've said anything concrete. Like, yeah, Guerrilla Games is not getting this out this year, but seeing all these articles that came up recently that basically said internal sources are confirming that they're figuring out how to maybe, restructure this whole marketing for the fall. I mean, it's a shame to see that, get pushed into 2022. But again, like you said, like I want it to just be the best game it could be. So it is what it is. I'm just excited to see it when it's done and when it releases.
Yeah. I personally, I feel like games in general need to be marketed less early,
Yeah.
because we see a lot of this. This is so common in the industry right now, is to announce these games and say, yeah, it's coming this year, and then it's been delayed to next year,
Yeah.
and then a few more months delay, and it's delayed again, and it's just like it's a natural part of the game's development
Mm-hmm.
process to need more time for development. But it's tricky when you get like investors who want firm deadlines for things. So I just hope that in general, it can be more accepted for things to be delayed as long
Yeah.
as they need to be, and that we can work out a better way to fund things and continue to develop as long as they need to be.
Agreed. And I think it's funny. You made me think of something else again when you said that about Fallout. We talked about Fallout earlier, and I remember there was a big conversation around Fallout 4 of like, hey, this is this game's coming out in like 3 months. Here you go. There was so much like these little tiny rumors like that game's coming out. There was like a script that got leaked, and people were like clamoring for it. But again, there was no real information other than like fake fan leaks until like the summer before that game came out, in that November, I believe it was like literally like 3-4 months before. Like, here's the game, it's coming out. And I remember them saying at the time, like, I think it was Todd Howard said, if we could release a game like a week after we announce it, or like the day we announce, like I would do that every time. But like, obviously you need time for marketing. But with a game that monumental, they were able to release it that quickly and have a huge, amount of sales numbers and that success. So it's funny to see that happen, and then years later with delays and stuff, it's like, all right, here's Elder Scrolls 6, like we're making it, so don't hate us. But again, it's gonna come out in another like 10 years. But like, here's like a
Oh
little
man.
teaser trailer. And as someone, a big Skyrim fan, a big fan of Bethesda Game Studios, I've been waiting for that game since I was literally like 12 years old. So now I'm graduating college, and I'm like, it's not even gonna come out for the next like 5 years, and there's still like a trailer out. So like, it's funny how like they kind of wavered, and like not that it's inconsistent. I understand why they did that. But like, it's tough to be like, this game's coming out in 3 months. Here you go. Versus like, here's this game, we're making it. Yeah, maybe you'll see it in the next decade, but probably not.
Yeah.
Like, so it's tough to see that. But again, like as a fan, but then again, like you said, coming back from an actual developer's perspective, again with the publishers and investors in mind, like obviously like development schedules can get very tricky, and delays happen. They just do. And a lot of times, sometimes it can be a cause for concern. We've talked about Cyberpunk in the past, and some other, it's the easiest one to mention these past few years, but some other, horror stories that have happened in developments. But again, there are many, many games that have gotten delayed, got the necessary time it needed, and then came out a better game than it would have if they didn't. So
Yeah.
again, a delayed game is better than an unfinished one, and in pretty much every case. So
Yeah.
I'm
Very
all
true.
here for just giving them more time and making sure people are okay and safe during all these COVID lockdowns. I'm pretty sure that Guerrilla Games is probably like in a state of lockdown right now. I'm not sure what the COVID restrictions over there are with the Delta variant and everything right now, but
Yeah.
it's first things first. Everybody at home has got to be safe and working on the game, and
Yep.
it comes out when it comes out. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, agreed. And speaking of games that have been in development for a long time and have been better for it, it looks like. Another title that I'm really excited about is Stray, which is the sci-fi game where you play as a lost cat and you're in a city of robots. It looks like it's coming in 22. So that's one that I'm excited about. They recently put out a new trailer, which I will pull up here and just have that running. But I've been seeing information about this game for years. I think 2016 is when it started development. But it just looks really cool, and I'm really excited for the kind of gameplay that they're showing.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, Annapurna Interactive has had a few notable games in the past few years. Again, they're also, speaking of that whole television film crossover, they're a big television film studio as well, Annapurna Pictures. And so it's kind of, I'm pretty sure they're a relatively new company. So to see them like branching out into games and film and stuff is really cool from them. And I've seen a lot of jokes online of people saying this looks like a Naughty Dog game. This looks like something that's like, like, and that's a really, even if it's a joke, it's a pretty good compliment for, that kind of level of detail and, single player kind of, exploration, linear like storytelling like this. And obviously it's a cat, so it's a lot different from The Last of Us or Uncharted and that kind of gameplay. But seeing this gameplay, seeing the way it looks, and I'm just really excited to play this game. This looks like a game that I'll definitely pick up.
Yeah.
And I think the first time they showed it was also at showed it in the context of PlayStation, I should say, was at another State of Play conference before the PS5's release, or maybe right after the PS5's release. I forget which one it was at. But I remember seeing it there and thinking, wow, like this is a game I'll definitely pick up for the PlayStation 5 because it looks fantastic. The lighting's incredible, the shadows, the puddles, and just this cat. Like I just love that. I love the art style. I love the atmosphere. The animations are great. Like you can see there's a lot of love and work put into this game. So it's something that's really exciting. I just think it looks really fun.
Yeah, it looks adorable and really, really just an interesting setting.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of science fiction. I mean, like Dawn City Heist is
of course, of course.
That's where that comes from. I'm a huge sci-fi fan. I like cats. I have a bunch of cats. I
have a cat as well.
Yeah, I have 2 here and 1 at my dad's house, and I really love beautifully crafted environments. That's something that I'm passionate about, both in games that I play and games that I make, because I love getting immersed in a beautiful world that's interesting and unique, and this definitely satisfies those criteria.
Yeah, for sure. And now that you say it, it's kind of funny. It's kind of like almost a combo of Feisty Ferret and Dawn City Heist. You have like
a little bit,
this fun animal, scurrying player character, and then you have this sci-fi, atmospheric world. It's a cool contrast, I'll say, for sure. I really love the whole aesthetic of this game, and again, I'm just excited to play it. It's really fun. It looks awesome.
Yeah.
And again, I think it's like you said, it's a 2022 release, so another game that maybe would have came out this year. I'm not sure if that was delayed. I'm not sure if there was a release date for it this year, but I think it's just broadly 2022. So that'll be interesting to see. And again, I just really love this art style here. You see all these
it's gorgeous.
I'm curious the lore behind all this.
Yeah, it's like realistic with a little bit of stylization, and something that I enjoy to think about in all kinds of media is like post-human environments, and that's what this looks like to me. And I really enjoy it's just populated by robots and animals.
Speaking of The Last of Us, where you see all this vegetation and overgrowth kind of environment, definitely like a post-human experience. And again, on brand with Horizon, as we talked about too. Like that's definitely a great setting, a great aesthetic for these kinds of worlds.
Yeah, I'm super excited to explore these environments.
It's cool there too. For sure.
It looks super fun.
You see we have even some interaction here. That's interesting.
Yeah, it looks like there's some like NPC quest kind of stuff going on, which I
wonder if they can understand or maybe communicate with the cat, given they have some robot intelligence that maybe humans wouldn't have.
Yeah,
that'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, interesting.
It looks like he at least assumed that the cat was understanding him there. he was giving him some instructions there, so that was interesting. You see here too, they're it looks like they're actually communicating.
Yep. And you've got this little drone companion in your cat backpack that you.
I think I spoke about last week on the stream. I just computed a Ratchet and Clank kind of vibes there of having that like that Lombax, that cat character with a robot on its back. Like definitely looks like a PlayStation kind of game, So I'm definitely excited for that. Speaking of PlayStation exclusives, I also wanted to talk about Kena Bridge of Spirits, which is staying in 2021. It did just got delayed, but I believe it got delayed in September of 2021. So it's sticking around this year. So I'm still excited for that game. I believe it was originally supposed to come out in August, so we would have been getting it soon. But I believe it's September now. So I think we could pull that up right here, maybe show that for a moment. Yeah. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this game. I'm not sure if you've seen this before or seen the previews on this, but this is another game that they've shown a few state of plays. It's a PlayStation and I believe future PC exclusive, but it's on PS5 and PS4.
Yeah, I think I recall seeing a trailer for this at a games conference,
Mm,
maybe a year or two ago, and I think it looks pretty cute and interesting.
yeah,
I'm not totally sure what the gameplay is going to be all about, but
and I
it
can maybe give some details there.
yeah.
But yeah, so I had the same initial reaction you did. I was like, I really like the art style. It kind of it gives me like that Pixar like kind of like cute
Hmm.
atmosphere. I like the I love the look of the gameplay and then the arrow effects and the combat. And I actually read there was a Game Informer kind of issue where they kind of gave a full focus report on this game and the team behind it. And the team actually was originally started by two brothers. Their studio is called Ember Lab, and they originally started in film and kind of made like I believe they made a fan film
Hmm.
for another IP. I'm forgetting the IP they created for. I read this article about 2 years ago now, and COVID times. That's like 10 years ago I read this article. So I apologize. Didn't have that off the top of my head. But they had this film background and they were like, we just want to make a narrative, video game experience. We're just going to do it. So I got, invested money in it. You can see some gameplay here. I love the art style they have here. And
Hmm.
basically the whole idea is it's also another kind of like post-human, apocalyptic world where there was some sort of cataclysmic event and where a lot of people aren't around anymore. And you basically go around helping these lost spirits kind of find peace after destruction of their village, their life, so that and you fight these malignant creatures here, as you can see, that are kind of corrupted by like a dark energy. So it's the
Wow.
whole idea that you're kind of like this spiritual like liberator of these like mystical lands. I really like the whole aesthetic and theme they're going for here. You can see she kind of just renewed the whole
Yeah,
area, so
I'm
you're kind of like cleansing the environment as you go through the story. So I like the whole art style and the themes and kind of the idea this game's going for. So I'm pretty excited to pick this up.
yeah, agreed. I was getting kind of like Okami vibes from this a
Mm,
little bit, and also oh my gosh, what's that game with the Pikmin,
mm.
with the little bouncy black things.
That follow you
Um,
around like little creatures.
yeah, but yeah, that gameplay looks super fun, and obviously those environments are gorgeous. I really like that
Yeah,
stylized atmospheric art style, and
agreed.
I'm excited to see this. I definitely am going to check this out actually.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm really excited about it, and I believe it's like I said, it's on PS4 and PS5, and I read that on PS5. I think they're called the rot. Those little guys that are running
hmm.
around, and I think you collect more rot as you go through the story, and I think you can have like up to 100 of them like
Oh
running
wow.
around you, and you can use them as like for attacks and use like waves of them to like fight other people. So I think on PS5 you actually see all of them at once like running around you.
Wow.
I'm not sure if PS4 can show as many characters on screen at once. So, but I'm definitely excited to see it on PS5 and just see all these little cute little creatures running around and like you can like throw. I think you can like make them like hurl them at enemies and distract enemies with them. So that'd be kind of a cool to see that gameplay feature. I'm not sure if we saw a ton of that in that trailer, but I may have been talking over it. But I'm definitely
Yeah.
excited to see that gameplay on PS5. It's gonna be pretty
Yeah, it
exciting.
looks really interesting. And it looks like this article says it's going to launch as a timed console exclusive on PS4 and
Mm,
PS5, and then the PC version will be on the Epic Game Store.
I see. Okay,
And I
very
guess
interesting.
it was originally supposed to release in 2020, but delayed,
Yeah.
and because of COVID, everybody transitioned to work from home.
Mhm.
So I wouldn't be surprised if it was continued to delay, but it also looks pretty far along in that
Yeah.
trailer. So
And I remember
I am
again,
excited
I
for
read
it.
an article maybe a year or two ago, and I remember they were pretty well off, and I think they even started on PS4 development exclusivity, and then transitioned to also including PS5 development a few years before the console dropped. So
Yeah.
I think that may have been maybe an extended challenge for them to kind of like start developing mainly for the PS5 after they already kind of, and then also keeping it in par to some respects with the PS4 version. Again, there's going to be just some discrepancies in terms of graphics and character counts, like there always is in Crush and regional games. But I think it looks great either way. I saw the trailers earlier on. It still looked great then. So I'm really excited for that game, and it's nice to have. Again, I don't think that game's $60. I believe it's $30 or $40 depending on PS5 or PS4. So that's good to see like these kind of like
Yeah.
independent games and that aren't a $70 release like these other AAA games can be these days.
Yeah.
It's a little more accessible and it looks like a game that for that price I definitely pick up this fall, especially
Hmm.
when again there's a lot of games getting delayed this fall. There's not a lot else coming out, and not to we can just we'll obviously discuss more of what's coming out in a second, but not to discredit those games, but it's good to see experiences like this still happening this year and not pushed, into 2022 or 2023 like almost everything else.
Yeah.
It seems like it's happening.
I'm a big indie fan in general.
Mhm.
I play a lot of smaller games, and I also agree that the $60 to $70 price point of like major AAA games right now is a bit much, especially
It's tough.
if you're like a broke college student like me.
Yeah.
It's tricky,
It's
but
definitely tough to choose like what is going to be the one I'm going to pick, or like this is
yeah,
wait for a sale. Like it's definitely more of a thought process these days when games just keep going, have gone on up in price relatively,
yeah.
especially with these monetization schemes of some other games where it's like it's tough to invest in games that are games as a service and loot boxes and all that when you
Mhm.
have all these different monetization practices. So it's definitely something to think about for sure. More
Yeah,
than more than the past, maybe I'd say.
yeah. Yeah. Well, what else do we have coming out in the next 6 months? I know there's the Guardians of the Galaxy
Yes,
game
that was
that
something
I
I forgot
saw.
about, and they actually. I'm not sure if it's something we could maybe pull up in the background. I would have to you would have to search it up real quick. But they came out with a trailer this morning, a little like Guardians of the Galaxy, showing off like the villain. I think there was like a conversation. They give you like a little cutscene, and like it was a Drax and Star Lord like conversation. You got a choice. It was pretty cool. But it was just nice to see like the graphics on it and stuff. And I think I love the vibe it's going for, I guess is what I was trying to say. The way that you're kind of like they're emphasizing the whole like starship conversations of the movies where they're kind of just like having banter and making choices, between the Guardians. That whole storytelling aspect seems awesome. And I think, there's been some controversy over the Avengers video game. I know that today was actually, I believe it was a year since they announced Spider-Man was coming to the Avengers game, and that still has never happened on PlayStation. There's been like no word of that whatsoever. And obviously, there's been controversy with the way that game's been handled and its multiplayer practices and its monetization and all that. But again, a lot of people really love that game. I did play the beta at the time. I actually did have a good time with the gameplay a ton. But now seeing another Square Enix published game with the Guardians, it looks like it's single player, it's narrative focused, there's decision based gameplay. It looks like it's going to be really interesting. And I don't know if this trailer does it justice or maybe gameplay, but like I think just seeing the style they're going for and like the way you can make choices during the game, I think it's gonna be really interesting, and I'm excited for that.
Yeah, when I first saw the trailer, I believe it was at E3 this year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm down. Like I
Yeah,
enjoy the
sure.
Guardians of the Galaxy franchise. I think this is a good medium for it. And I'm the gameplay with the kind of RPG and the dialogue choices, I think that totally fits here and has the potential to be really fun. The art style looks cool. I enjoy that their representations of the Guardians
Mhm.
are recognizable as their comic book or movie
Yeah,
counterparts, but they're not
but they're
like
not
copies.
exact.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because I don't think it would have been good to just like have it be Chris Pratt and
Agreed.
Zoe Saldana or whatever.
And like you said, they kind of get that vibe, but it's not overtly like this is just
Yeah,
Chris Pratt bantering. Like it's very
yeah.
much like he's his own Star Lord, and I like that because I think that's why again I know we've been talking about PlayStation a lot today, and I'll talk a little more about some Xbox stuff down the pipeline. But like Spider-Man PS4 and then again on PS5 with Miles Morales, if you had characters that weren't exactly like their movie and comic counterparts, but were definitively that character, but had their own spin on it and
Hmm.
kind of like their own personality, and I really appreciated that because it kind of kept
Yeah,
them, it made them their own. And then it was like this was one of this was like my favorite interpretations of Spider-Man in a long time, like in the game. And they didn't have to like piggyback back off of the movies or off of comics per se. I mean,
yeah,
obviously you have to represent the character and adapt it from those sources, but they had their own life, they had their own feel to them, and I really appreciate that. And I think you see here like Drax isn't like Batista. Like he obviously
hmm,
he's definitely Drax, and you see like him and Peter are gonna talk in a moment, like kind of like discussing like what to say, and he's like, should I take the lead on this or you want to talk? Like I like that they have like that kind of movie banter of like
yeah,
like them kind of like being at odds or maybe having like a touching like friendly moment. And it's interesting. I read another article in this game as well where you're basically only playing as Peter Quill. You're only Star Lord the whole game, but you use kind of in a similar way that we were talking about before with Kina. You use your other player characters around you to like create combo moves on with your own controls. So you could be like, I'm gonna call in Rocket to like shoot, like distract this guy by shooting something over here, while I have Drax come in and like slide and like slice and dice them or something. Like you can kind of like make combos and characters will interact with each other actually. So it'll be cool to see like how you can kind of like command the Guardians and a kind of strategy aspect during battles. So that was another cool aspect of this game for sure. And you
Yeah,
can
that's
see here that was the
interesting.
dialogue there. You can make a choice.
Yeah, that was something that I thought looked really interesting and cool in the other trailer that I watched for it. So I'm interested to see how that plays out in gameplay because it sounds like it could be fun. I
Mm-hmm.
always enjoy in RPGs when you have like a party of members and you can kind of combo up with their
Yeah,
abilities. And I enjoy I like tactics games where you can pause it and direct them what to do.
yeah,
But it looks like this is going to be mostly real or entirely real time,
real time
which
combat it
yeah.
seems. Yeah. But it'll be cool to see how they incorporate these kind of strategic elements of like from what I understand, it's if you call in different guardians and also from certain angles, I believe too, you can kind of say like, hey, I want you to come distract it. Like I said before, like having one guardian distract the other, or maybe having combo moves where they both charge in and kind of like tag team on one enemy, so then it kind of takes the pressure off you to shoot another enemy or something like that. So it'll be interesting to see the strategy play into real time combat where I like the games are embracing the idea of even in single player or multiplayer having that real time strategy where you could kind of like incorporate some of those strategy game elements into that combat.
Yeah, and it also looks like this game is going to have a lot of narrative, which I know a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people are into for RPGs. And I something that I like to do with my family is play a game and have them just watch
Yeah,
like it's a movie or
like it's a
TV show.
movie.
Yeah,
Just kind of have that experience with you.
yeah, and I think that this game is going to be really well suited to that.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. And it's cool to, again, that's another game that got I'm not sure got delayed at all, was announced again like 2 months ago,
Hmm.
during E3, and now it's coming out very soon. I think it's September, is it October, I believe.
Yeah, October 26th, I think, is what that trailer
October
said.
26th, which is awesome. So
Yep.
like that's right around the corner. And again, that was a game that was no one knew about really. They kept pretty tight, you know, sealed. So it's coming very soon. So again, a very cool example of what all these games delaying. There are some cool experiences to have this fall for sure.
Yeah.
And we are running out a little bit out of time here, but I would like to mention before we go that like we do have a lot of interesting releases this fall in terms of like re-releases. Like I know we have the new GTA,
Mm.
expanded and enhanced again, GTA 5 and online just being re-released on PS5 and Series X, I believe, as well. But it got some attention in the PlayStation State of Plays as well. And I just wanted to say I think it's interesting because I think that while we haven't heard a lot from it recently, we have seen little pitter patterings of news from Rockstar when they gave some GTA Online updates. I believe it was last week where they revealed this tuners update where there's a bunch of new car meets and a bunch of like automobile related, car tune-ups type update for the game. Huge update. And they also tweeted out when that came out that there would be some car upgrades that increased car speeds that wouldn't be possible on PS4 and Xbox One generation.
Mm.
So that's interesting to me, which basically says to me that the new GTA Online on PS5 is going to have maybe better load times, better LODs, where you could speed through the city faster, going 200 miles an hour, and you're still loading all the mountains and the trees and the buildings at a faster rate just because these consoles can now handle that. So that's kind of exciting to see like how gameplay, even on the game came out in 2013, even on like an almost decades old game, can maybe turn around. And I almost think that maybe there's more to meets the eye than on this release. I think there could be maybe new content for GTA Online, maybe a new map, and like maybe this clamoring for GTA 6 is just like not really consequential because maybe they're just planning on, again, expanded and enhanced. They're planning on maybe like bringing some new GTA experience, to next gen for the next few years, and that'll be interesting to see like how that goes about. Because I feel like there's a fatigue on that game, but if they could really make that a next gen experience and make me want to jump back in, and I believe they can. I'm sure once I see like the ray traced like graphics and everything, I'm like, okay, this is something. This is like, it's not GTA 6, but this is something. So
Yeah.
that's interesting to see. That's coming out this November, I believe, November 15th. So, or November
Interesting.
11th actually, 11/11/21. So that'll be interesting.
Very cool.
And
Uh,
anything else for that besides Halo, which again still doesn't have a release date, so it's hard to be excited for that one either. I know there was the live playtest this week, so that's something to talk about. But any thoughts on that? Halo Infinite?
you know what? This is gonna make me sound like a real fake gamer, but I've never played a Halo game.
Hey, that's fair. That's fair. See, I know you said, like, I know you're pretty. You said you're a PlayStation guy. I don't know if you've been a big Xbox guy, but
No, I've never owned an Xbox.
Gotcha. See, Xbox was my like first like kind of big console. I had my grandma had like a PS1 when I was younger, so that was something I started off on. But then I had a Xbox 360, which was like my first console I ever had for myself. That wasn't like me like sneaking to my brother's room to play when he was. So like that was like Halo was a big game for me because like I remember that was a game that was I think we had my brother didn't want because he was playing sports games or something. So I picked up Halo. I was like, "What's this?" And like I remember I had a friend at school who played it a lot. I used to make Forge maps, and that was kind of like my first little intro to game development. I would make it like just a bunch of custom maps and game modes and stuff and levels, and had a ton of fun with that game. So that was kind of my background with Halo. Again, I was never like like I remember I used to play it a lot, and I played 4 and Reach and those games, but I was never like I would say like die hard where I was like I need to get I need to get Halo 5 and get it immediately. Versus I ended up did playing Halo 5 on an Xbox One. I eventually did investing it, but I was a little disappointed to be honest. I mean, I was a big fan of the Bungie games, and to see them move on to Destiny and stuff was interesting. But not to knock on 343 and Halo Infinite honestly looks kind of exciting. See, I've seen some new gameplay with grappling hooks and stuff. It looks really awesome. But again, the Halo 4 and 5 were my favorites, and I kind of fell off on the series. So even though I have a background with Halo, I'm like I haven't been really gung ho with Halo and since my childhood years. So I'm hoping that maybe this game could give me a reinvigoration to the series and make me want to jump back in on maybe a PC or future Xbox purchase. But we'll see.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I really have no stake in the Halo franchise. I feel like in order to get an appreciation for it, I would want to go back and play the earlier titles. But yeah, I mean, I know it's a huge game and people have been interested in Infinite for a long time. So
yeah, and they've had that if you want to play the earlier titles, they have that Master Chief Collection, which has like the first few games, and that's been pretty big on Xbox and on Steam the past few years. So that's definitely something you can check out.
Yeah,
but if you want to like ever get into that series, I know it goes on sale every once in a while. But I think to close it off, there's one more game that's been very interesting to me, and we haven't been able to talk about recently, which was Battlefield 2042. I don't know if you've seen the trailers for this at E3 or the EA Play events.
I have not. I probably saw the E3 trailer because I watched E3.
Got you. There was just one really exciting thing about it to me was that they have a lot of new maps and a lot of crazy new gameplay features. There's 128 player lobbies, just crazy vehicle construction and building construction act. Yeah, it's gonna be like colossal type war gameplay we haven't seen in games in a long time. I mean, there's been games in the past that have had that large player counts like that, and there's obviously Battle Royale that's all over right now. But on that kind of scale, I think it's something that we haven't seen from Battlefield, obviously, and something we haven't seen from a lot of other places really in a long time. So it's really interesting to me. But the main mode I was interested in was the Portal mode. I don't know if you've heard about this, but it's basically this new, like kind of like a Forge mode, this new game mode and level editor for Battlefield 2042. I'm not sure how much you can customize the maps themselves, but there's basically like a full-on like coding system like online where you can use like scratch code, like dragging and dropping like like puzzle piece code and like conditional statements, like if this value gets to this. So like you can create a lot of crazy like custom game modes, and they also have like all these old Battlefield maps and equipment and weapons and coming into it too. So you can have like Battlefield 3 soldiers fighting with like Battlefield like World War II soldiers, like just one team just has knives in the trailer, another team just had like shock paddles, and it was just like you can create all these crazy, and like you have like 128 people doing that. You can have like crazy like medieval battle situations or like custom game modes. So it's definitely something I'm really interested in, because I feel like once you give a community that level of customization, and you literally have like scratch code on there where you can just code your own like conditional like level events, like that's going to be some really interesting stuff. So that's just something I'm excited to see this fall, like on a brighter note that hasn't been delayed yet. It looks like there's some, not a lot of news, but they are slowly dripping details, and I'm hoping that game will come out on time, because I'm excited for that for sure.
Yeah, sounds like it will be pretty big.
Yeah, for sure. Is there any other games you had in mind for this fall, or maybe that was delayed, that you're upset about before we end up closing this up?
I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
I got you. I mean, it's tough. It's one of those years where like everything just kind of like went away, so it's tough. But I know like Xbox has said a lot about their roadmap, and it's tough because with them it's like, I talked about before about not announcing games early, and PlayStation's kind of been tight-lipped. They're like, yeah, Returnal and Ratchet & Clank that came out this year. Like they haven't really talked about their fall or 2022 much at all, after they delayed God of War and Gran Turismo, and now probably delaying Horizon. So there's a lot of silence there. But then you have Xbox, who's like, here's our next 6 years like of development. Here's like, you have Halo, you have Redfall, you have the next Elder Scrolls, you have Fable, there's just so much going on over there. But again, it's like all down the pipeline of like maybe we'll probably we had some releases this fall, but in terms of like major blockbuster releases, everything's kind of up in the air right now. So it's tough to just like it's all you can do is just be excited and be hopeful that things are going to work out and we're going to get some great games and some great developments in the industry these next few years. So
yeah,
that's my hope.
And there's always new stuff getting announced all the time. So I'm always looking forward to what we see next in the world of video games.
Yeah, agreed. And I think next year we may have some big announcements. I'm hoping, especially from agree. Like obviously like I said, we kind of know a lot of the roadmap for Xbox. So I hope that all those games, like I just mentioned, those like 6 games I just mentioned coming for Xbox, we hear more about. And then also PlayStation, it's like you have all these big IPs. You have God of War. I mean, you have Spider-Man 2 that could easily come out in the next like 2-3 years, in my opinion. Like I think that game came out next year. I mean, given that game came out in 2018, I believe, Miles Morales and also Ratchet and Clank were different development teams. So obviously they probably were lending across studios internally at Insomniac, but who knows? Like maybe I think that team has been, churning away at the sequel to Spider-Man for a while. And if we could have that game on PS5 next year, that'd be incredible. I'm obviously a big fan of Spider-Man. As I've been saying, so.
Spider-Man's pretty good. Yeah.
I would love that game next year as well. But again, it's all up in the air. It's tough. But hopefully, again, we'll see some new and exciting stuff in the coming months and years for sure.
Yep.
All right.
Well, thank you for having me on today. This was a lot of fun to talk about all this stuff. Here.
Again, I'm happy that we got to close it off, like talking about some upcoming games we're excited about, and we got to cover a lot of stories today, especially with just developments in the industry with hardware and stuff. So again, I'm always great talking to you, Cory. So happy that we could have done this and I had you on. So again, like thank you for being here. Thank you to everyone who has been watching, and I guess thank you again. We're gonna sign off.
Yep. All right, see you next time.
Bye. Bye.